A signature on a check can buy a house, a car, or a silence. But Beatrice Sterling believed a signature could buy back her family's dignity. When she sat across from her daughter-in-law in a private room at the Dorchester, sliding a check for $10 million across the linen tablecloth, she thought she was removing a stain from the Sterling legacy. She thought she was discarding a waitress who had aimed too high. Beatrice didn't know that the woman sitting quietly across from her didn't need the money. She didn't know that by destroying this marriage, she wasn't saving her company, she was signing its death warrant. This is the story of how the Sterlings disowned the only person who could save them. The silence inside the private dining room of the Dorchester in London was heavy enough to crush bones. Outside, the autumn rain lashed against the window panes, blurring the lights of Hyde Park. But inside, the air was dry, conditioned, and smelling faintly of expensive lilies and old money. Sarah Jenkins, or Sarah Sterling, as she had been known for the last 2 years, sat with her hands folded in her lap. She wore a simple navy dress, off the rack from Zara. It was the dress Liam used to say made her eyes look like the ocean. Tonight, Liam wouldn't look at her eyes. He was staring intently at the stem of his wine glass, his knuckles white, his posture rigid. Across the table sat Beatrice Sterling. The matriarch of the Sterling Automotive Group did not slump. She sat like a monarch on a throne, her silver hair coiffed into an indestructible helmet, her Chanel suit armor against the world of commoners. "It's a generous offer, Sarah," Beatrice said. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was the voice of a woman whose whisper could drop a stock price by 12 points, $10 million, tax-free, structured through our offshore holdings in the Caymans. You take the money, you sign the annulment papers based on irreconcilable deceit, and you disappear. Sarah felt a cold numbness spreading from her chest to her fingertips. She looked at the check, sitting on the pristine white tablecloth. It was more money than her father, a mechanic in Ohio, would have made in 10 lifetimes. "Deceit?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. She looked at Liam. "Liam, look at me. What deceit?" Liam flinched. He was 32, the heir to a European luxury car empire, a man who had charmed her with poetry and late-night drives and prototypes. Now, he looked like a truant schoolboy, terrified of his headmistress. "You didn't fit, Sarah," Liam muttered, still addressing the wine glass. "Mother says, the investors, the board, they don't respect the marriage. They see a waitress from a diner in Leeds. It's hurting the stock." "It's not just the stock, Liam," Beatrice cut in, her eyes sharpening. "It is the bloodline. The Sterling name dates back to the Industrial Revolution. We build the engines that drive Europe. And you married a girl who doesn't know which fork to use for the turbot." Beatrice took a sip of her sparkling water. "We tolerated it for 2 years. We hoped you could be trained. But the gala last week was the final straw. You discussed engine schematics with the German ambassador instead of discussing charities. You embarrassed us. You are blue-collar, Sarah, and you always will be." Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. At that gala, she hadn't just discussed schematics. She had corrected a flaw in the Sterling EV battery cooling system design that the ambassador mentioned. She had tried to help. "I love him," Sarah said softly. "And he loves me. Isn't that enough?" "Love is a poor currency in the world of business," Beatrice scoffed. "Liam has a duty. Jessica Montgomery has returned from Paris. She is a Montgomery. Steel and shipping. That is a merger. That is a marriage." Sarah looked at Liam again. This was the moment in every movie where the hero stands up, flips the table, and declares that love conquers all. Liam took a deep breath. He looked up, his blue eyes watery. "I'm sorry, Sarah. The company. The legacy. I can't let it fall. Mother is right. It's too much pressure." The betrayal didn't feel like a knife. It felt like a vacuum. The air just left the room. The man she had nursed through the flu, the man she had supported when his father died, the man she had loved for his kindness, was just a boy in a bespoke suit. Sarah reached out and picked up the check. Beatrice's lips curled into a smug, victorious smile. She had won. The poor girl always took the money. Sarah looked at the number. 10 million. "You think this is what I'm worth?" Sarah asked, her voice suddenly steady. The tremble was gone. It is more than you are worth, Beatrice replied icily. It is the price of my son's freedom. Sarah stood up. She didn't scrape the chair. She moved with a grace that Beatrice had never chosen to notice. She held the check up to the crystal chandelier light. You're right about one thing, Beatrice, Sarah said. The informality made the older woman bristle. I don't fit in here. Sarah ripped the check down the middle. Beatrice gasped. Liam's jaw dropped. Sarah ripped it again and again until $10 million fell like confetti onto the untouched plate of beef Wellington. I don't want your money, Sarah said, her voice dropping an octave, losing the soft, pleasing pitch she had adopted to try and please them. It became authoritative, cold, and I don't want your son. If he is weak enough to let his mother buy his divorce, he isn't man enough to be my husband. She pulled the platinum wedding band off her finger and dropped it into Liam's wine glass. It made a sharp clink against the crystal. Goodbye, Liam. When you realize what you've done, don't come looking for me. Sarah turned and walked out of the private room. She didn't look back. She didn't cry. Not yet. The rain outside the Dorchester was torrential, but Sarah didn't hail a cab. She walked 2 blocks, letting the water soak the Zara dress, washing away the scent of the Sterling family. She ducked into the lobby of the Mandarin Oriental, a hotel just as exclusive as the one she had left, but one where the Sterlings didn't keep a permanent suite. She walked to the front desk. The concierge looked at her wet hair, cheap dress with skepticism. I need a phone, she said, and a secure line. I'm afraid phones are for guests only, miss, the concierge said, his nose wrinkling slightly. Sarah closed her eyes and exhaled. She reached into her purse, a battered leather tote that Beatrice had once called hideous, and pulled out a false bottom. From it, she extracted a black card, not an Amex black, something heavier, pure titanium, with a single gold chip and no numbers, just a surname etched in laser script, Van Doren. She slid it across the marble counter. The concierge glanced at it, and his color drained instantly. He looked from the card to the wet woman standing before him. He typed something into his terminal, and his hands began to shake. My apologies, Miss Van Doren. I didn't recognize. The penthouse suite, Sarah interrupted. And call Arthur Penhaligon. Tell him the sabbatical is over. Tell him the heir is coming home. 2 hours later, Sarah Jenkins no longer existed. Standing in the floor-to-ceiling window of the penthouse, looking out over the London skyline, stood Sarah Van Doren. She had showered and changed into clothes. Arthur had rushed over from a storage vault, kept for this exact contingency. A white cashmere turtleneck, tailored trousers from the Row, and a vintage Cartier tank watch that cost more than the house she grew up in, or rather, the house she pretended to grow up in. Arthur Penhaligon sat on the velvet sofa, an iPad in his hand and a glass of scotch in the other. Arthur was 60, the general counsel for Van Doren Industries, and the only man who knew the truth. Did they sign the papers? Arthur asked gently. Liam signed, Sarah said, looking at the rain. Beatrice looked like the cat who ate the canary. They think they've cleaned house. They have no idea, Arthur mused. 2 years, Sarah. You played the role perfectly. The mechanic's daughter from Ohio. I still don't understand why you did it. Sarah turned. Her face was pale, but her eyes were fierce. Because I wanted to be sure, Arthur. My whole life, people have looked at me and seen a checkbook. They saw the Van Doren lithium fortune. They saw the mining rights in Nevada, the patents in Geneva. I wanted someone to look at me and just see. Sarah. She walked over and poured herself a drink. I met Liam at that coffee shop by accident. He didn't know who I was. He fell in love with a girl reading a paperback book. For 2 years, I was happy. I thought I could escape the legacy, but the legacy always calls, Arthur said. He didn't fight for me, Arthur, she whispered, the crack in her armor finally showing. He sat there and let his mother buy me off. He chose the company over me. Sterling Automotive is in trouble, Arthur noted, swiping on his tablet. Their Q3 earnings are disastrous. Their combustion engines are outdated. They are betting everything on their new EV line, the Sterling Ether. Sarah laughed, a dry, humorless sound. The Ether. I saw the blueprints. The battery thermal management is a disaster. It overheats at high speeds. I tried to tell Liam. I tried to tell their engineers at the gala. They laughed at me. They told me to go fetch canapes. They need batteries, Arthur said. Reliable, high-density batteries. And there is only one company in the world that produces the solid-state cells they need to make the ether work, Sarah finished. Van Doren Industries, Arthur said, a small smile playing on his lips. Sarah walked back to the window. She saw her reflection. The soft, accommodating wife was gone. The heiress was back. They threw me out like trash, Arthur. Beatrice said I was a waitress. She said I was bad for business. Sarah took a sip of the scotch. It burned, grounding her. Schedule a board meeting for tomorrow morning in New York. Prepare the jet. And Arthur? Yes, Ms. Van Doren? Buy 4.9% of Sterling Automotive stock. Just enough to get their attention, not enough to trigger a disclosure immediately. And send a letter to Beatrice Sterling. Tell her Van Doren Industries is open to discussing the battery contract they've been begging for. You want to save them? Arthur asked, surprised. Sarah turned, and her eyes were cold steel. No, I want to own them. 3 months later, the boardroom of Sterling Automotive was a place of panic. It was located in a glass skyscraper in Canary Wharf, London. Usually, the atmosphere was one of arrogant confidence, but today, the air smelled of stale coffee and fear. Beatrice Sterling sat at the head of the table, her face a mask of fury. Liam sat to her right, looking thinner, darker circles under his eyes than before. Next to him sat Jessica Montgomery, his new fiancée. Jessica was scrolling through Instagram on her phone, seemingly bored by the collapse of her future husband's empire. Explain this to me again, Beatrice hissed at her chief financial officer. A sweating man named Marcus Note, changed from restricted list. Let's use Nigel. It's the ether, Madame Sterling, Nigel stammered. The prototypes are failing the safety tests in Germany. The batteries are overheating. We've had 3 fires on the test track. The European regulators are threatening to ban the launch. Fix it. Beatrice slammed her hand on the table. We can't, the chief engineer said, looking defeated. Our battery tech is 3 years behind. We need external suppliers. We need Van Doren. Van Doren Industries has ignored our calls for 6 months, Beatrice shouted. They are the most reclusive tech conglomerate in the world. Their CEO hasn't been photographed in public in 5 years. They haven't ignored us entirely, Liam spoke up. His voice was raspy. We received an invitation yesterday. The room went silent. Beatrice turned to her son. What? A summons, really. Liam slid a heavy, cream-colored envelope across the table. The CEO of Van Doren Industries is in London. She has agreed to a meeting, tomorrow, 10 a.m., by Defid Minstein Relly, by Defided, at their UK headquarters, in the Shard. Beatrice snatched the envelope. She read it quickly, her eyes narrowing. She? A female CEO? Apparently, Liam said. No one knows her name. She operates through proxies. But if we don't get this contract, Mother, we are insolvent by Christmas. The banks have frozen our credit lines. Then we go. Beatrice straightened her jacket. And we charm her. Jessica, you will come too. Me? Jessica looked up, popping her gum. Why? Because we need to show family unity. We need to show that the Sterling legacy is strong. We need to show that Liam is settled with a woman of substance, not that mistake he made before. Liam flinched at the mention of Sarah. He hadn't spoken her name in 3 months, but her absence filled his penthouse like a ghost. He found her hairpins in the bathroom sometimes. He smelled her cheap vanilla perfume on his pillows. He was miserable. Jessica was suitable, wealthy, and connected, but she was cold and vapid. She didn't listen to him. She didn't make him laugh. We will get this contract, Beatrice declared, standing up. I don't care who this Van Doren woman is. Everyone has a price. We just need to find hers. The Shard, London. The next morning. The Van Doren offices occupied the top 3 floors of the Shard. It was a fortress of glass and minimalism. The Sterling delegation, Beatrice, Liam, Jessica, and Nigel, the CFO, stepped off the elevator into a waiting area that screamed quiet, terrifying wealth. There were no receptionists, only security guards in black suits who scanned their IDs in silence. Intimidating, Jessica muttered, adjusting her diamond necklace. I like it. Keep quiet, Beatrice snapped. Let me do the talking. Arthur Penhaligon appeared from a set of double oak doors. He wore a suit that cost more than Liam's car. Mrs. Sterling, Mr. Sterling, Arthur nodded politely, ignoring Jessica. Thank you for coming on such short notice. Mr. Penhaligon, Beatrice used her most charming socialite voice. We are honored. We understand the CEO is a busy woman. She is, Arthur said, but she has been following Sterling Automotive's situation very closely. We are eager to discuss the synergy between our companies, Beatrice said confidently. Synergy, Arthur repeated, the word tasting dry in his mouth. Please, come in. Arthur opened the double doors. The boardroom was vast, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of London. At the far end of a 30-foot table made of black marble, a chair was turned away from them, facing the window. The Sterlings filed in. They sat at the opposite end of the table. Where is she? Beatrice whispered to Liam. Miss Van Doren? Arthur spoke to the room. The Sterlings are here. The chair slowly swiveled around. Beatrice prepared her smile. Liam straightened his tie. Jessica checked her reflection in her compact mirror. The woman in the chair turned to face them. She wore a bespoke white suit, sharp and architectural. Her hair, once loose and messy, was pulled back into a sleek, severe chignon. On her wrist glinted a diamond bracelet worth a small country. But it was the face that stopped Liam's heart. He stopped breathing. The blood drained from his face so fast he nearly fainted. Beatrice froze. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. It was a rictus of shock. Jessica looked up, confused by their silence. Who is that? The woman at the head of the table didn't smile. She interlaced her fingers and leaned forward, her eyes locking onto Beatrice with the intensity of a laser sight. Hello, Beatrice, Sarah said. I believe you have a check for me, or did you tear that one up too? The silence in the boardroom stretched so thin it threatened to snap the necks of everyone present. Beatrice Sterling, a woman who had faced down union strikes, hostile takeovers, and parliamentary inquiries without blinking, looked as though she had been slapped by a ghost. Sarah? Liam whispered, the name escaping his lips like a prayer. He took a half-step forward, his hand instinctively reaching out across the black marble. Is that you? Sit down, Mr. Sterling. Arthur Penhaligon barked from the side of the room. The command was sharp, like a whip crack. Liam froze, then slowly sank back into his chair, his eyes never leaving the woman at the head of the table. You. This is a joke, Beatrice stammered, her composure fracturing. She looked at Arthur, then back to Sarah. This is some kind of sick prank. You hired her. You hired my son's ex-wife to play a part. How much are you paying her? I'll double it. Sarah didn't raise her voice. She simply tapped a button on the console built into the table. The blinds on the far wall descended, darkening the room, and a massive projection screen illuminated behind her. It displayed the corporate structure of Van Doren Industries. At the very top, above the board of directors, was a single name, Sarah Elizabeth Van Doren. My grandmother was Elizabeth Van Doren, Sarah said, her voice cool and detached, stripped of the warmth Liam remembered. She founded this company on a patent for lithium extraction in 1965. When my parents died in a plane crash when I was 4, I inherited everything. I was raised by trustees, tutors, and lawyers until I turned 25. She looked at Beatrice. I wanted a break from the boardroom, Beatrice. I wanted to see if I could live a normal life. I wanted to see if someone could love me, for me, and not for the billions attached to my surname. So, I took a sabbatical. I moved to London. I got a job at a diner. And I met your son. Sarah's gaze shifted to Liam. He looked sick. I didn't tell you, Liam, because I was afraid. Afraid that if you knew, you'd change. Turns out, I didn't need the money to make you change. You were weak, all on your own. I didn't know, Liam choked out. Sarah, I swear. It's Miss Van Doren, she corrected him. And we are not here to discuss your failed marriage. We are here to discuss your failing company. Jessica Montgomery, who had been watching this unfold with wide, confused eyes, finally spoke up. Wait, you're telling me the waitress, the one who wore Target shoes, is richer than us? Sarah turned her gaze to Jessica. It wasn't malicious. It was dismissive. Jessica, the battery technology your family's shipping fleet uses, my company owns the patent. Every time a Montgomery ship leaves port, you pay me a royalty. So yes, considerably, Jessica shut her mouth. Beatrice, realizing the gravity of the situation, tried to salvage the wreckage. She straightened her spine, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace. Well, Beatrice said, smoothing her skirt, this is unexpected, but surely, Sarah, surely we can put the past behind us? We are family, after all, or we were. If you have the technology we need, we can come to an arrangement, for old time's sake. Sarah laughed. It was a dark, rich sound that echoed off the glass walls. Old time's sake? You offered me $10 million to disappear, Beatrice. You told me I was bad for the bloodline. You humiliated me. You broke my heart. And now you want a favor? Sarah stood up and walked over to the projection screen. She tapped it, bringing up a schematic of the Sterling Ether EV. Your cooling system is flawed, Sarah said, pointing to the diagram. I tried to tell you at the gala. The thermal runaway potential in your current battery pack is 40%. If you launch this car with your current tech, people will die, and Sterling Automotive will be sued into bankruptcy. We know, Nigel, the CFO whispered, wiping sweat from his forehead. That's why we're here. I can fix it, Sarah said. Van Doren Industries has a solid-state battery that operates at half the temperature with double the density. It would make the Ether the best car on the market. Name your price, Beatrice said quickly. We'll pay a premium, 20% above market rate. I don't want your money, Sarah said. I have enough. Then what? Liam asked. What do you want? Sarah walked back to the head of the table. She placed her hands flat on the marble and leaned in. I want control. Beatrice scoffed. We aren't selling the company. I don't want the whole company, Sarah said. I want the EV division, the Ether project. I want 51% controlling interest in the future of Sterling Automotive. You can keep your legacy combustion engines, Beatrice. They're dying anyway. But the future? The future belongs to me. That's preposterous, Beatrice shouted, standing up. That is our flagship product. That is the Sterling legacy. Then leave, Sarah said calmly, sitting back down and turning her chair toward the window. Walk out that door, launch your car with the overheating batteries, and wait for the lawsuits. See how much the Sterling legacy is worth when your stock hits zero. There was a long silence. The rain lashed against the glass of the shard. Beatrice looked at Nigel. Nigel looked down at his papers and gave a microscopic nod. They had no cash. They had no time. They had no choice. Fine, Beatrice hissed, the word tasting like bile. But Liam remains the face of the project. We cannot have the public know we sold out. Liam can stay on as a figurehead, Sarah agreed, not looking at them, but he reports to me, and I want full audit access, starting today. Agreed, Beatrice said. She grabbed her purse, her hands shaking with suppressed rage. Come, Liam. Jessica. Beatrice marched out. Jessica followed, shooting a nervous glance back at the woman in the white suit. Liam lingered. He stood at the door, his hand on the frame. Sarah, he said softly. The night I left, I cried. Sarah didn't turn around. She watched the London traffic far below, tiny red lights moving in the rain. Get out, Liam, she said. We have a meeting at your factory tomorrow at 8 a.m. Don't be late. The Sterling Automotive headquarters, in the industrial outskirts of Birmingham, was a sprawling complex of brick and steel. It was a place Sarah had visited only once before, to bring Liam lunch, only to be turned away at the gate by security because she wasn't on the approved list. Today, the gates opened before her motorcade even slowed down. Sarah sat in the back of a blacked-out Range Rover, flanked by two other SUVs carrying her legal and financial team. Arthur Penhaligon sat beside her, reviewing a dossier. "You're playing a dangerous game, Sarah," Arthur murmured. "Taking control of their division is one thing, but insisting on an on-site audit personally, you're walking into the lion's den." "It's not a lion's den, Arthur," Sarah adjusted her blazer. "It's a circus, and I need to see how badly the clowns are running it." The motorcade pulled up to the executive entrance. Liam was waiting there, along with a phalanx of nervous executives. It was raining again. It always seemed to be raining in this story, and Liam held a large black umbrella. As Sarah stepped out, a security guard moved to shield her, but Liam stepped forward, extending his umbrella over her head. "Sarah," he said. "Miss Van Doren," she corrected automatically, stepping past him and ignoring his gesture. She walked into the lobby, her heels clicking rhythmically on the terrazzo floor. The sound echoed like gunfire. "Where is the data room?" Sarah asked, not breaking stride. "Third floor," Liam said, hurrying to catch up. He looked frantic. "Sarah, please, can we talk for a second? Just 5 minutes, before you start tearing the place apart." Sarah stopped at the elevator banks and pressed the button. She looked at him. He wore the same cologne he wore on their first date, sandalwood and rain. It made her chest ache, which only made her angrier. "Talk about what, Liam? About how you let your mother hand me a check like I was a prostitute? Or about how you're marrying a woman who thinks Synergy is a type of energy drink?" Liam winced. "I'm not marrying her. Not really. It's complicated." "It doesn't look complicated. It looks like a merger," Sarah said, as the elevator doors pinged open. "Third floor. Now." For the next 6 hours, Sarah and her team dismantled the Sterling Automotive EV division. They occupied the main conference room, turning it into a war room. Boxes of files were brought in, servers were accessed. Beatrice was nowhere to be seen. She had claimed a migraine and stayed at her estate, leaving Liam to face the executioner. By 2 p.m., Arthur asked the room to clear out, leaving only himself, Sarah, and Liam. Arthur placed a single file folder on the table. He looked grave. "What is it?" Sarah asked, rubbing her temples. "We found something," Arthur said, "in the supply chain ledger. It's regarding the safety tests for the ether." Liam paled. "We know the batteries are bad. That's why you're here." "It's not just the batteries, Liam," Arthur said, sliding the file to him. "Look at the suspension struts. The alloy mix." Liam opened the file. He scanned the metallurgical reports, his brows furrowed. "This says, this says we're using grade B aluminum. The specs call for grade A aerospace titanium alloy." "Exactly," Arthur said. "Someone changed the order 6 months ago. They swapped the high-grade metal for cheap, brittle aluminum and pocketed the difference. If that car hits a pothole at 60 miles per hour, the front axle will snap. And," Sarah added, her voice deadly quiet, "the difference in cost is about $15 million. Where did that money go, Liam?" I don't know." Liam looked genuinely horrified. "I sign off on the design, not the procurement. Beatrice handles the supplier contracts personally." Sarah exchanged a look with Arthur. $15 million, Sarah mused. "That's a specific number. That's enough to cover the interest payments on the massive loans your mother took out to hide the losses from the failed Asian expansion 3 years ago." Liam looked up, his eyes wide. "What Asian expansion? We never expanded into Asia." "Exactly," Sarah said. "She tried. She failed. She lost 50 million, and she buried it. She's been cannibalizing the company to pay the debts ever since. Why do you think she was so desperate for you to marry Jessica Montgomery? The Montgomery shipping dowry would have filled the hole in the accounts before the auditors found it." Liam sank into a chair. He looked like a man watching his house burn down. She compromised the safety of the car? She would have killed people? To save her reputation?" "Yes," Sarah said. "Beatrice doesn't care about the cars, Liam. She cares about the name, and she was willing to sell you, me, and the safety of your customers to protect it." Liam put his head in his hands. I didn't know. I swear to God, Sarah, I didn't know. Sarah looked at him. For the first time all day, her expression softened slightly. She saw the man she had loved. He wasn't malicious. He was just willfully blind. He had spent his life being protected by his mother, never asking where the money came from, never looking under the hood of his own life. You have a choice, Liam, Sarah said. He looked up. We can go to the authorities, Sarah said. This is fraud, negligence. Your mother will go to prison. The company will collapse. The Sterling name will be mud. Or, Liam asked, his voice trembling. Or, Sarah stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the factory floor below, where robots were welding the frames of the cars that were effectively death traps. Or, you help me. We keep this quiet for 48 hours. We instigate a hostile takeover of the entire board. We force your mother out permanently. You give me full control of the entire company, not just the EV division. She'll destroy me, Liam whispered. She already has, Sarah said sharply. She turned to face him. She destroyed your marriage. She destroyed your integrity. She made you a pawn in her fraud. Are you going to be a Sterling, Liam, or are you going to be a man? Liam stood up. He walked over to the table and looked at the fraudulent reports. He ran his finger over his mother's signature at the bottom of the procurement order. He took a deep breath. The boyish fear seemed to evaporate, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. What do you need me to do? Liam asked. Sarah smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a general who had just recruited a defector. Tonight is the Sterling Autumn Ball, Sarah said. All the shareholders will be there. The press, the board, Jessica, and her family. Yes, Liam nodded. I'm going to attend, Sarah said, and you are going to escort me. My mother will have security throw you out. No, she won't, Sarah handed him a USB drive. Because you're going to show her this first. You're going to tell her that if she makes a scene, if she says one word against me, this evidence goes to the Serious Fraud Office. Liam closed his fist around the USB drive. It felt heavy. And Jessica? Liam asked. Leave Jessica to me, Sarah said. I think it's time the Montgomerys knew exactly what they were buying into. Sarah, Liam paused. Why are you doing this? You could just let us fail. You could walk away. Sarah picked up her purse. She walked to the door, then stopped. Because I loved you, Liam. And because the Sterling engines, the real ones, the ones your grandfather designed, they were brilliant. They deserve to survive. Even if your mother doesn't. She opened the door. Pick me up at 7. And Liam? Don't bring the limo. Drive the prototype. The one we used to drive to the coast. Liam blinked, a flush of memory hitting him. The 58 Roadster? The 58 Roadster, Sarah confirmed. I want to remind everyone of what this company used to be. As Sarah walked out of the executive suite, she felt a vibration in her pocket. It was a text from an unknown number. She checked it. Stop digging, Miss Van Doren. Accidents happen to nosy girls. B. Sarah stared at the screen. Beatrice. She showed the phone to Arthur as they got into the elevator. A threat? Arthur raised an eyebrow. A declaration of war, Sarah said, typing a reply. I don't have accidents, Beatrice. I have insurance. She hit send. Arthur, Sarah said, as the doors closed. Call the security team. Double the detail for tonight. And get me the dress. The red one. The vengeance dress? Arthur asked with a smirk. The vengeance dress. The Sterling Autumn Ball was held at the Grosvenor House on Park Lane. It was the kind of event where the champagne flowed like water, but the smiles were as dry as the desert. It was a gathering of sharks in tuxedos and vultures in silk. Beatrice Sterling stood at the top of the grand staircase, greeting guests. She wore emerald green, the color of envy and money. She was in her element. Despite the threat from Sarah, despite the crumbling finances, Beatrice believed she was invincible. She had arranged for the engagement announcement to happen at 9 p.m. sharp. Once Jessica Montgomery's father, a shipping magnate named Charles, publicly endorsed the union, the banks would extend their credit lines. Beatrice just needed to survive the next hour. She checked her watch. 7:15 p. Where is he? She hissed to Nigel. Liam should be here. He's coming, Nigel said nervously, adjusting his glasses. He said he's driving himself. At that moment, a hush fell over the entrance hall below. It wasn't the polite silence of arrival. It was the stunned silence of spectacle. Through the main doors walked Liam Sterling. He looked devastating in a midnight blue tuxedo, his hair swept back, looking more like a movie star than a corporate heir. But no one was looking at Liam. On his arm was a woman who seemed to be made of fire. Sarah wore the dress. It was a custom crimson gown, structured and sharp at the bodice, flowing into a train that looked like a pool of blood or liquid ruby. It was backless, daring, and completely inappropriate for a modest Sterling affair. It was a dress that didn't just ask for attention, it demanded submission. Her hair was down, cascading over one shoulder in soft waves. She wore no necklace, only long diamond drop earrings that caught the chandelier light and threw it back with blinding intensity. "My God," Charles Montgomery whispered, standing next to Beatrice. "Who is that?" Beatrice felt the blood drain from her face. She gripped the banister until her knuckles turned white. "That," she choked out, "is the help." The crowd parted. Sarah and Liam walked up the grand staircase. The click of Sarah's heels was a metronome counting down the seconds of Beatrice's reign. They reached the landing. Sarah stopped directly in front of Beatrice. The height difference was negligible, but Sarah seemed to tower over the older woman. "Good evening, Beatrice," Sarah said. Her voice was warm, like honey laced with arsenic. "Lovely party. I hope you don't mind that I'm crashing. I hear you're looking for investors." "You are not welcome here," Beatrice whispered, her smile fixed for the photographers flashing away below. "Security will remove you." "I don't think so," Liam stepped in. His voice was firm. "Sarah is my guest, and she is the largest shareholder of the EV division. She has a right to be here." Jessica Montgomery appeared, looking pretty in pale pink, but washing out completely next to Sarah's crimson brilliance. "Liam? What is going on? Why is she here?" Sarah turned to Jessica. "Hello, Jessica. I'm here to save you from a very bad investment." "Enough," Beatrice snapped. "Liam, get her out of here. Mr. Montgomery is waiting to hear the announcement." "We need to talk, Mother," Liam said, privately. "Now, I have nothing to say to you until you come to your senses." Beatrice turned to leave. "It's about the aluminum, Beatrice," Sarah said, loud enough for Charles Montgomery to hear. Beatrice froze. Charles Montgomery, a shrewd businessman with a face like tanned leather, turned slowly. "What about aluminum?" "Nothing," Beatrice said, her voice rising an octave. "Just technical details. Charles, let's go get a drink." "Grade B aluminum," Sarah continued, ignoring Beatrice. "Substituted for titanium in the suspension struts of the new Sterling Ether. The differential in cost, $15 million, was siphoned into an offshore account to cover old debts. If you merge your shipping logistics with Sterling Automotive, Mr. Montgomery, you aren't buying a legacy. You're buying a corporate manslaughter lawsuit." The circle of people around them, wealthy investors, board members, and politicians, went deadly silent. "You liar," Beatrice hissed. "She is a disgruntled ex-wife, Charles. She's insane." Sarah calmly opened her red clutch. She didn't pull out a compact. She pulled out the folded metallurgical report Arthur had prepared. She handed it to Charles Montgomery. "Page 4, Charles," Sarah said. "Signed by Beatrice Sterling." Charles Montgomery put on his reading glasses. He read in silence. Beatrice watched him, her breath hitching. Liam looked at the floor, ashamed, but standing his ground. Charles looked up. The warmth was gone from his eyes. He looked at Beatrice with pure disgust. "Is this true?" Charles asked. It's a fabrication," Beatrice stammered. "I'll have her sued for libel." "Liam?" Charles looked at the son. "Is this true?" Liam looked at his mother. This was it, the moment of no return. He could lie, save the family name for another day, and sink back into the toxicity, or he could burn it down to build something new. He looked at Sarah. She wasn't looking at him with pity anymore. She was looking at him with expectation. "It's true, sir," Liam said clearly. My mother authorized the swap. The cars are dangerous, and the company is insolvent. Charles Montgomery closed the file. He turned to his daughter. Jessica, we're leaving. But Daddy, Jessica whined. Now, Charles barked. He turned to Beatrice. You will be hearing from my lawyers regarding the bridge loan we gave you last month. I want it back. By morning, the Montgomerys walked away. The merger walked away with them. The murmurs in the room grew into a roar. The board members present were already pulling out their phones, calling their brokers, calling their lawyers. Beatrice stood alone on the landing. Her empire was crumbling in real time, amidst the smell of expensive perfume and fear. She turned her eyes to Sarah. If looks could kill, Sarah would have been ashes. You ruin everything you touch, Beatrice spat. You ungrateful peasant girl. I should have paid you more to leave. Sarah took a step closer. She leaned in, so only Beatrice could hear. You couldn't afford me then, Beatrice, and you certainly can't afford me now. You thought I was a waitress you could discard. But you forgot one thing about waitresses. What? Beatrice breathed. We remember who ordered what, Sarah smiled, cold and hard. And the bill always comes due. Suddenly, the doors to the ballroom burst open. It wasn't more guests. It was 4 officers from the Serious Fraud Office, followed by Arthur Penhaligon. Beatrice Sterling, the lead officer announced. We have a warrant for your arrest regarding corporate fraud and embezzlement. The room gasped. Flashes popped. Beatrice looked at Liam. Do something. I am your mother. I'm doing something, Liam said, tears finally spilling from his eyes. I'm stopping you. As the officers escorted a screaming Beatrice Sterling down the grand staircase, her emerald dress sweeping the floor for the last time, Sarah stood at the top, watching. She didn't smile. It wasn't a happy moment. It was a necessary one. Liam stood beside her. He looked broken. It's over, he whispered. Sarah reached out and adjusted his bow tie. No, Liam, the lie is over. Now the work begins. 1 year later, the rain that had plagued the Sterling automotive plant in Birmingham for years seemed to have finally cleared. In its place, weak but persistent winter sunlight streamed through the skylights of the assembly floor. The factory, once a tomb of silence and rusted ambition, was now a symphony of industry. Robotic arms whirred with precise, rhythmic hisses. Sparks showered like gold dust from the welding stations. But the most important sound was the silence of the engines. Rolling off the line was the Sterling Van Doren Phoenix. It was sleek, low to the ground, and painted a deep, iridescent midnight blue, the same color as the tuxedo Liam had worn the night the old empire fell. It ran on Sarah's proprietary solid-state batteries, offering a range that made competitors weep and a safety rating that had restored the public's faith. Up in the glass-walled executive suite, the atmosphere had shifted from panic to quiet power. Sarah Van Doren stood looking down at the production line. She wore a charcoal gray suit that was tailored to within an inch of its life, her hair cut into a sharp, decisive bob. She didn't look like the mechanic's daughter anymore. She looked like a titan. The Q4 projections are conservative. A voice came from behind her. Sarah turned. Liam Sterling sat at the desk that used to be his mother's, but he had changed it. The imposing mahogany throne was gone, replaced by a drafting table covered in schematics, coffee cups, and graphite dust. He looked tired, older but lighter. The haunted look of a man living in a cage was gone. Conservative? Sarah walked over, picking up the report. We've pre-sold 40,000 units, Liam. That's not conservative. That's a monopoly. Liam smiled. It was a genuine smile, one that reached his eyes. We did it, Sarah. We actually pulled it out of the fire. We cleared the debt, Sarah corrected gently, placing the report down. The company is safe. The workers kept their jobs. That was the goal. Liam's expression sobered. He hesitated, fiddling with a stylus. I visited her yesterday. Mother. Sarah's face remained impassive. How is Beatrice enjoying Her Majesty's hospitality at HMP Bronzefield? She's diminishing, Liam admitted, looking down. She spends her visitation hour complaining about the prison food and asking if I've found a loophole for an appeal. She still thinks this is a temporary embarrassment. She doesn't understand that the world has moved on without her. Arthur says the fraud case was airtight, Sarah said, her voice devoid of pity, but also devoid of malice. She forged safety documents, Liam. She risked lives for vanity. 5 years is a kindness. I know, Liam sighed. He stood up and walked around the desk, stopping a few feet from Sarah. The air in the room suddenly grew thick. The hum of the factory below seemed to fade away. Sarah, Liam started, his voice dropping to that intimate register he used to use when they were just a couple in a small apartment. It's been a year, a hard year. We've fought side by side in the trenches. We saved this legacy together. Sarah watched him. She knew what was coming. She had seen it building in his eyes for months. The way he lingered after meetings. The way he brought her coffee, exactly how she liked it. We make a good team, Sarah said neutrally. We do. Liam stepped closer. He reached out, his hand hovering near hers before he found the courage to take it. His palm was warm. I'm not the man I was in that restaurant, Sarah. I'm not the coward who let my mother buy you off. I've rebuilt myself. Just like we rebuilt this car. I found my spine. He squeezed her hand. I still love you. I never stopped. I think we could try again. Not as the heir and the waitress, but as equals, partners. It was the fairy tale ending. It was the moment the audience would expect the reconciliation, the kiss, the fade to black. Sarah looked down at their joined hands. She remembered the ring he had taken back. She remembered the check on the table. She remembered the way he had looked at the floor while his mother humiliated her. She gently, but firmly, pulled her hand away. The silence that followed was louder than the machinery below. You have changed, Liam, Sarah said, her voice soft but unyielding. You are a good man now, a strong man. You are the man I thought I was marrying 3 years ago. Then why? Liam asked, his voice cracking. If I'm that man, why can't we? Because I'm not that woman anymore, Sarah interrupted. She walked to the window, looking out at the gray Birmingham skyline. That girl, the one who read paperbacks and made you soup when you were sick, she died the moment you let your mother tear that check in front of me. She had to die so I could survive. She turned back to him. Her eyes were dry and clear. You're in love with a memory, Liam. You want redemption. You want to fix the past, but you can't fix people like you fix engines. I don't look at you and see my husband. I look at you and I see the worst moment of my life. I can't build a future on that foundation. Liam stood frozen. He looked as if she had slapped him, but then, slowly, a look of acceptance washed over his face. He nodded. It was a painful, jerky movement. I understand, he whispered. I had to ask. I know, Sarah said. She walked to the door. You're an excellent chief engineer, Liam. The Phoenix is a masterpiece. Be proud of that. Be the Sterling your grandfather wanted you to be. That is your redemption. And you? Liam asked. Where do you go? Sarah opened the door. She looked back, her silhouette framed by the light of the hallway. I have an empire to run. The departure. 10 minutes later, Sarah walked out of the main executive entrance. The wind was cold, biting at her cheeks, but it felt bracing. Her driver was waiting by the curb, holding the door of a black limousine, but parked next to it was a prototype, a Sterling Van Doren Phoenix convertible in silver. Sarah waved the driver away. Take the night off, Arthur. I'll drive. Miss Van Doren? Arthur Penhaligon appeared from the passenger seat, looking concerned. You have a board meeting in Tokyo in 12 hours. The jet is waiting. I'll make it, Sarah said, sliding into the driver's seat of the convertible. She threw her bag into the passenger seat. She pressed the starter button. The car didn't roar. It hummed. A low, powerful sound like a gathering storm. It was the sound of the future. She checked her phone one last time. A notification from the bank popped up. The final installment of the Sterling debt had been paid. The company was clean. She wasn't the victim. She wasn't the secret heir. She wasn't the scorned wife. She was Sarah Van Doren. She shifted the car into gear. As she punched the accelerator, the car surged forward, pinning her back against the leather seat. She sped out of the factory gates, past the new sign that bore her name in letters 10 feet tall. She didn't look in the rearview mirror. There was nothing behind her that she needed. The road ahead was wide, open, and entirely hers. And that brings us to the end of the story of Beatrice Sterling's $10 million mistake. She thought she could buy dignity with a check, but instead, she sold her own future. It's a harsh reminder that true worth is never written on a bank statement. The people we underestimate today, the ones we think we can discard, might be the very ones holding the keys to our survival tomorrow. Sarah didn't just get revenge. She got something far sweeter. She got indifferent. She proved that the best comeback isn't shouting. It's succeeding so loudly that your enemies become irrelevant. What do you think? Was Sarah right to walk away from Liam, even after he changed? Or does true love deserve a second chance? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal, business, and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a twist. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.
And there's people having lectures. Flower arranging. My mum used to pick flowers every day from the garden, cut flowers, put them in fuck me. Oh, sorry, Jack, can't afford your tennis racket. We've got to spend all the money on a ramp and a motorised wheelchair for this money-grabbing little fucking... Why do you need a motorised one? No arms. That's fair enough. That is fair enough. I can tell some of you feel a bit uncomfortable laughing at little Timmy, who's a little 6-year-old lad. He's got a funny little voice because his chest is all fucked. Got no arms, no legs, just like stumps, right? But let me tell you something about Timmy to make you feel better about yourselves. He's a fucking racist. Yes. Horrible little shit, he is. You little fucking bigot. You disgusting little fucking racist, you racist scum, you filthy little fucking, you fascist, you fucking, you disgust me. Homophobic? Yeah. He's like, they're not like us. Nothing's like you disgusting little fucking, you prejudiced little piece of, you ball of hate, you disgusting little fucking racist homophobe. I wish we'd had a scan. You absolute, misogynist. If he could, he'd rape. There's your little Timmy.